Assassinations are, by their very nature, political. And last week, Brian Thompson, who was the CEO of United Healthcare, was gunned down by a guy with a silenced pistol who shot three inscribed bullets into his back, which made it clear that he was complaining about the state of healthcare in the United States. And he blamed Brian Johnson, or at least was sending a message to Brian Johnson that, well, he was not going to take it anymore. At the same time, we have a rise in what seems to be targeted political assassinations in the United States right now. Just remember, during the presidential campaign, President Trump was shot by a sniper from a distance of like a half a kilometer or something like that, and another guy tried to kill him outside of Mar-a-Lago. He wasn't even close to successful. But it does seem that we are in an era of political violence where it's becoming more successful, because I can't even remember the last targeted political killing in my lifetime. I mean, I'm sure it happened, but it's not like present, and we're seeing this on the rise. Are we becoming an assassination nation? Is that where we see political change going? Now, I have studied targeted killings in the past. I was a foreign correspondent in India, and I saw where when people don't have access to justice, they don't have access to a feeling that they have participation in a sort of a legal process, they will take to arms. It happens all over the world, repeatedly, over and over again. And here's the thing about assassinations that we don't like to talk about, is that they often do create political change. Often not for the better, but they certainly create a government response. And like right now, the guy who shot Brian Thompson is on the run. He'll probably get caught. There is an enormous police dragnet.
NYPD officers have more than 200 images of the person they want to question, including this one captured in.
But I also want to point out that there is something weird about this dragnet. If you look at the history of New York murder investigations, like how often they solve them. Last year, I got a statistic right here, there were 386 murders. Only 47% of them were solved. Indeed, only 32% of crimes in New York ever get solved. Now, of course, it is different when you have a probably billionaire CEO, like a very rich CEO, get gunned down in your streets. The police are going to muster a lot more resources. They're going to do the drag nets across Central Park looking for discarded items, like the backpack that was lost by the shooter. And they're going to go after him. But think about, like, in terms of justice writ large, we have a problem in America where American citizens do not feel heard. What we see are the super rich being protected over and over again, and the actual taxpayers, 53% of them don't ever have their murders solved. Maybe in some cases not even really investigated seriously. In addition to that, the problem of healthcare is enormous in America. We have, the highest healthcare costs of any nation in the world, and we also have lower healthcare outcomes than any of our peer nations out there. Shooting this guy was a clear message that we want some change. We probably want single-payer healthcare. We probably want healthcare that matches the other sorts of programs out there, and we do not want our claims denied. Personally, I dropped my insurance this last month. I was paying $700 a month for crappy insurance with a $14,000 deductible, which meant that basically if I got ill, I would be in the hole, $21,000 before insurance paid anything. That's not insurance. That's being held ransom by the fact that that I could end up in the hospital with a giant bill. It ain't fair. And I think that in the United States, especially in the middle class, in the class of people who are not poor, because Obamacare actually does do a pretty good job providing access to reasonable subsidized health care for poor people. Yay. But the people above that very low threshold, and I think it's around $30,000 a year, maybe it's like 40, $1,000 a year that you earn, and then you get these sort of serious subsidies. And then way below that, you get Medicaid, and those people have actually decent health care. And then the middle class has crappy health care. I knew a guy here in Denver who owns a real estate empire and self-insures. He buys his own insurance on the exchange, and he is constantly complaining about how he can't get appointments, how he can't get access, and then when he does, the prices go through the roof. And dude's rich. The rich people should have, like you would think, decent healthcare, but they don't. It is a shambles in America. So, I mean, I don't condone violence, obviously, but I'm not surprised by it at all. And around the world where you have a sense of injustice and no ability to use the government or any sort of tools that might be available to you to solve the problem, what you get is political violence. You get target assassinations, and now we see that healthcare CEOs all around the country, I think they're mostly in Minnesota, but all around the country, have taken their names offline and are in hiding because they're scared of being shot, because they know that they are targets. In addition, again, our president was shot. Now, I did not vote for Trump. I do not support shooting at presidents. I think it's a really, really bad idea. But we are going to see more of this because there are armed people. We have more guns in America than we have people in America. On left and right, there's a lot of guns here. We are going to see people using weapons in order to make political points, because people do not feel like the Supreme Court is on their side. They do not feel like big business is on their side. They don't feel like they have allies. Because, of course, Donald Trump will use a leftist, this guy was a leftist, shooting, I assume he was a leftist, shooting the CEO of a healthcare company as a reason to crack down on leftists in general, the people who have no intention of shooting someone to get their point across. And we will see this as an excuse. I guarantee it. Maybe Trump has already made a speech about it, about how we need to crack down on these crazy leftists out there. And this will create a cycle of violence, and it ain't good. Okay, one more point here, and then I'm gonna get out of here. In the past, assassinations, we don't like them. We don't think that these are good, but they have been effective at creating political change. Oftentimes, it's a violent reaction by the government against innocent people. We can see a spiral of violence, like we saw in the Arab Spring, like we see in Syria, like we see, honestly, everywhere. But on the other hand, there are instances in the past where we have a violent movement that went parallel to a peaceful movement, and that was the special sauce to make drastic political change. And, I'm an India guy. I lived in India for 6 years. I'm going to use India as an example. I could use a lot of other countries as an example. But in India, 1947, India got its freedom. And we all think that it was because of Gandhi, this nonviolent guy who did the Salt March and Satyagraha, actively going out there, getting arrested by the police, and showing the horrors of the British colonialists in their faces, and provided a mirror at how bad they were. And this was one of the reasons why India got its independence. But it was not the only reason. There was another reason. There was also a freedom struggle. There was an active militant movement in India against the British. He ran a movement where he actually had troops going through Sikkim and in China, and then going and also fighting against the British soldiers. There was a guy named Bhagat Singh who threw bombs into Parliament in Delhi, killed a bunch of people, shot a British officer, was later hung, was a young guy, wrote a manifesto from jail. There were these people who were sparks, and the way I see it, when India finally got its independence after World War II, 1947, the reason was you had the hammer and the anvil, right? The anvil was the peace movement, the pretty nice face of the people being like, look, we just want peace. And then there was the hammer of the guys who were out there shooting people and making it a really, really hard problem to deal with. The only thing is that we need to remember, if this is the vision of political change that we're going towards, what we need to remember is that it's not fun for anyone. It's a really bad time. I am very glad that I did not live through the Indian independence movement. I mean, I'm a white guy. I probably would have been on the wrong side of it anyway. But like it was not good for people. Revolutions are generally not good. Innocent people get caught in the crossfire all the time. And I really worry that we now live, or are about to live, in an assassination nation. A lot of people don't believe the Supreme Court's got their back. A lot of people don't believe that the president has their back. A lot of people don't believe that they will have a vote in the next elections, or that the vote is rigged. People on the right and left both think the vote is rigged. This is the ground terrain for violence. And people have a right to be angry. I surely hope that it doesn't break out into wide-scale violence, but it is something that I think we should be aware of, could definitely be coming down the pipeline. I really hoped that America would be above this, but these are unprecedented times. Those are my thoughts for now. This is on my back channel. I reserve the right to change my opinion on all of these things in the future, given more data, given a more genteel perspective. I could change. This is what I'm thinking right now. From Pokebear LLC in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney's Back Channel.